So welcome to Structo's Meet the Writers. This is a short form interview series where we talk to the writers and poets who have contributed work to Structo 20. Today, very happy to be talking to Luigi Coppola. Hi, Luigi.
Hi. How are you doing, Ewan?
Very well, thanks. I've got all my blinds shut because it's absolutely roasting outside.
I was going to say you got the lighting perfect for your face, so well done.
Appreciate that. It's just because there's like a blinding miasma of light kind of just behind some blinds.
I've tried to balance it at my end as well.
Yeah. So we're going to kick off with part of a poem you have in the new issue. We've got two poems from you. And yeah, you're going to stop whenever you feel like is a natural stopping point, and we can chat about why.
Okay, we'll do. Okay, so this is the longer out of the two pieces that are in the issue. It is called There Was a Young Species. There was a young species that wiped out the bees, polluted the breeze, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. There was a dread species that drowned all the cats, skinned them and wrung them and swung them in sacks. They drowned all the cats and wiped out the bees, tightened their squeeze, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. There was a strange species that slaughtered the hogs, violent epilogues for all of the hogs. They slaughtered the hogs and drowned all the cats, skinned them and run them and swung them in sacks. They drowned all the cats and wiped out the bees, increased the degrees, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. There was a blind species that butchered the tigers, the satiate buyers, with the skins of the tigers. They butchered the tigers and slaughtered the hog. They slaughtered the hogs and drowned all the cats, skinned them and run them and swung them in sacks. They drowned all the cats and wiped out the bees, brought a deep freeze, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. There was a harsh species that hunted the rhinos. For ivory they disposed of all of the rhinos. They hunted the rhinos and butchered the tigers. They butchered the tigers and slaughtered the hogs. They slaughtered the hogs and drowned all the cats, skinned them and run them and swung them in sacks. They drowned all the cats and wiped out the bees, sold all they seized, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. There was a cold species that culled all the elephants. Oh, what malicious negligence to cull all of the elephants. They culled the elephants and hunted the rhinos. They hunted the rhinos and butchered the tigers. They butchered the tigers and slaughtered the hogs. They slaughtered the hogs and drowned the cats, skinned them and run them and swung them in sacks. They drowned the cats and wiped out the bees, spread a disease, wiped out the bees. Tell me why, please. So that's the first half of the poem.
That's perfect. And it's when you see it in the issue, it's an entirely justified piece of type, which has this. It's really nice to hear it, but you get quite a close sense of that relentless pace of it, just by the way that you set it out when you wrote it.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice to hear it.
Thank you. I experimented with the layout on the page. It was always a performance poem. I've used it for open mics and slam poetry. It comes within the 3-minute boundary of slam poetry before you start to lose points for going over the time. So it's certainly designed that way, the repetition and the rhyme. And having it on the page, how to set it out, whether it's a long piece with the rhymes, end rhyming, or that sort of was relentless. I sort of preferred that for the page submissions as well. So yeah, thank you. I think that works really well.
Do you find, because you do a lot of performance, and the full recording of this, you have a recording of this on your YouTube channel, which we can link below.
Thank you.
But when you're writing stuff down for performance, do you write it in a very different way? When I guess obviously you commit it to memory in due course, but when you're setting it down in the first place, is it in a very different way?
I think I always worked to the rationale that the poem is more important than the poet. Whatever the poem needs, that's what it is. If it naturally works as a performance poem, then I'll write it as that and I'll keep that in mind. If it's not, and it's a page poem, which I think the other piece that's in Structo is, I don't think I would ever do that in an open mic or a slam. That's such an isolated page poem. Whereas something like this, the first thought of the poem, I thought this is going to be a performance piece. And one of the videos of me performing it is late at night in a street and I'm just a madman. I'm shouting and screaming at people about the problems in the world, which I love doing, which you don't get on the page necessarily. But like you said, the formatting sort of slightly helps with that as well, the relentless pace of it as well. So I think that, yeah, the answer to that would be you've got to serve the poem, I think. Whatever, if it's a performance, if it's not, if it's a poem that you're going to give to friends or loved ones and no one else should see it because it's not very good and it's only for those people anyway, then that's what the poem is. Whatever the poem needs, that's what you should be supplying.
It's interesting because we get quite a lot of submissions which have fairly obviously been written with performance in mind, or have come from performance pieces which do not work on the page.
No, it's a
and
very
that's
difficult
fine.
balance.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine, and there's no reason why they should, in a way.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see one which very clearly does both. And I wonder if it is that partly the way it's formatted, because I wonder whether, and this is coming from purely a question, there's no great idea behind this, if it's when performance pieces are transcribed for print, maybe people think it has to look like a page poem, it has to look a certain way. So it's nice to see. I think the way this works, it's very much following that rhythm, and it's, of course, there's the rhythm that it's based on. You talk about in the intro to one of the performers that I was looking at on your YouTube channel, which was
there was an old lady that swallowed a fly. Yes. Sometimes I introduce it. I think I might have done in a video where my poem is actually the original word.
I got it.
They had to change it for political reasons, of course. But subverting nursery rhymes and fairy tales is a classic trope of writers.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I love that idea of twisting it and modernizing it and to deal with current issues.
And what's funny is that I didn't notice that the first time I read it.
Interesting.
So it worked, clearly.
Yeah. Excellent. That's good to hear.
And the subject is very clear, and the message behind it is, if message is the right word, is very clear. Basically, we're messing up a lot of things. Is that something that runs through much of your work, or was that something that was on your mind at the time?
Certainly at the time, I think. I mean, if you keep up with the news, it's almost constant. Every second or third article is about the environment and animal abuse and how we're destroying the planet, blah blah blah, blah. All those things. It's almost relentless, which is maybe a good thing. What I try to avoid to do is, there's no preaching in the poem. There's no solutions. I'm not saying, oh, we should do this. The poem just talks about, this is what we are doing. If I was to preach any sort of solution, I'd be a hypocrite. I live in a modern society. I use plastic as much as anyone. I don't check where the food or clothes that I have come from. So it's you can't be a hypocrite, and you can't preach to other people about it.
It's interesting, but there's clearly a vein of humor running through a great deal of the work you do. I was having a poke around your website earlier, and I came across the Choose Your Own Adventure.
Excellent.
What was it called? The fighting fantasy, fighting poetic,
fighting posy fantasy. That's an archaic word, I think. Yeah.
So
I've
for those who don't know, this is where you have a book and you read a passage, and then you make a decision and go to a certain page in the book, and you flick through. And if you're anything like me, as a small child, you put your finger in where you were.
Of course.
And then if you die, you immediately go back to where you were.
Yes, absolutely. That's the only way to get through the books. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
You slumped at the desk in the story.
Desk,
Have another go anyway.
I will.
I think it's all hyperlinked. I think there's lots of references to Ted. Thank you. Lots of references to Ted Hughes and Dylan Thomas. I think Sylvia Plath is in it as well for some reason. I try to be as playful as possible, if only just to keep people engaged. I think it's very easy to be solemn and serious with poetry, and that's not its origins. It was always supposed to be about community and oral storytelling and sharing stories, not so much always serious and on the page. So yes, thank you.
And a lot of stuff, I guess, comes through perhaps from your performance work, in that often humor hits better. In my experience of going to live poetry events, you know, a work has to be has to connect with a great deal more people when it's serious. There can be humor. People are often looking for humor and are very happy to receive it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your experience.
I think absolutely. It's always a relief when you go to a poetry reading and there's a poet that doesn't take them quite themselves as seriously, or has at least a funny piece, and it makes it stand out. If anything else, if nothing else, you stand out from the rest of the poets that are so serious and quiet, and are that stereotype of a reading. And not to say that I don't have those types of poems. I can bore you quiet as well with the other poems. But having that loud and energetic and funny poem as well. Comedians talk about, you know, there's nothing better than actually getting a laugh, and it's a hard thing to do as well. So I definitely try to do that in poetry.
I think it seems to me, from what I've seen, is that the difference between taking yourself seriously and taking the poetry seriously and being overly serious. There's a very fine line between all of those things, and it's
oh, absolutely.
That's always.
I think if you do, if you do both, if you take yourself seriously and your poem seriously, I think you're in trouble, aren't you?
I usually
especially the reading.
I leave at that point. No, really, I stopped going to live poetry stuff for quite a while, for a few years, because of, I don't know, I think I just had a few too many of those in a row. I just needed to have a break from it, which was, it was nice to come back and realize that, okay, I have just been just been overly selection bias going on.
Living in London, I feel quite lucky that pre-lockdown something poetic or performance or open mic or slam was happening every night in London. If you know where to look, you could go into a pub or the Poetry Cafe or anywhere in London, and there'll be something going on. Within those nights, maybe 1 in 10 of the readers at most are probably, you know, are exciting and worth something, and make the evening as well. So I'd recommend giving it another go.
Definitely. Oh, I have, and I'm back on board now. It was
oh, excellent.
No,
it's perfect timing for you to be back on board for it.
It was a couple of years ago, but completely right. But as it turns out, YouTube, there's a lot of stuff on there, but it's there is, if anything, far too much. So but I'll link a few things below this video.
That's great, thank you.
So as I said at the start, this is supposed to be a short form video, so I'm not going to keep you much longer. But are you working much at the moment? Are you writing much? How are you feeling creatively during this period?
Creatively, I started off trying to write every day, and I still try to do that. The emphasis on the word try. I'm collaborating a lot with friends in terms of writing. We've got a couple of pieces coming out that we work collaboratively on. Trying to do some music as well, some video recordings of poems, anything sort of to mix it up as much as possible and try to stay creative as much as possible. Plus lots of DIY. Sort of balance things out as well.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot for taking the time again. And
no, thank you.
You can read 2 poems by Luigi in the new issue.